And now I'm going to play out visuals. And this comes from the location after the video of the women being paraded by a mob went viral. We have been told, and let me be verbatim, and then I'll take Brijesh on record on this. And let me explain. And these are visuals. So what has happened is the women have come into action. These are the alleged houses of the accused. The women went there and the houses were torched. Obviously, there is anger. There is anger. We are playing you pic loops and videos. Manipur is unique that women are at forefront when it comes to political activism. They were subject to brutal violence. A video which we saw, and we have been told through a lot of reports that there may be other videos which Kuki MLAs are claiming. We have seen how women played a role in stopping the Chief Minister Biren Singh from leaving his office. We also saw a video posted by the Spear Corps whereby women stop the cavalcade of the armed forces, army. In another case, militants had to be released. The four people are under custody. The four people are under custody. But what is happening is, and I say this without taking a position, it shows lawlessness, it shows women at front, it shows vigilantism, it also shows that there is a cycle of violence. If anyone has studied Frantz Fanon, and this is for you, Dr. Guite, I'll come to you. Frantz Fanon, that the only way the cycle of violence ends is when the violence ends. Dr. Guite, your first comment on the visuals which are pouring in, which also shows that there is no local authority. The presence of the state is absent. I'll come to you, Brijesh, first.
See, Kartike, there can be 50 ways to look at it, when you want to take the administration or hear the administration side. But the fact of the matter is that, the president is called the first person and the commander-in-chief and all. And governor is said to be the topmost authority. There were a couple of interviews of Governor Anasuya Uke, which was aired. And, one of the lines which she used was an extremely telling line on the law and order situation in the state of Manipur. She said that she had to ask the DGP that, what exactly was the police doing for this long? And would they have taken any action if the video would not have come out? Now imagine the governor has to ask this kind of question to the DGP. It shows the reality of Manipur in its bare form. The fact that governor herself is not very sure of the fact that whether police would have taken any action or not is bizarre. For a police which can arrest those people, I would repeat myself, that which can arrest those people in flat for 36 hours, after once the video became viral and there was massive pressure on them, did not do anything for 70 plus days. This shows you the exact situation where, the Manipur police is. and the versions which are coming out, the version which are coming out, which is, and I have no because as a good journalist, I must also applaud the fact that what our fellow journalists who are doing, a report which was published in, which we discussed yesterday also, which has been published in today's The Indian Express, Karthik. The family is saying that that there are two versions of snatching and being looted. They're saying that they were handed over to the mob by the police, which makes this even far more ghastly than you can ever imagine. I can understand that a mob of 1,000 can outnumber 5 or 10 policemen. It doesn't require rocket science, but for those policemen to hand over the and not taking any actions and the kind of registration.
What do I think? For example, in armed forces, such gross acts of indiscipline, you're kicked out of the system. Even armed forces have tradition. Even the mutiny which took the British establishment, Jawaharlal Nehru and other people argued the case. History tells us that they were not inducted back. They were not inducted back into the system. They stayed out of the system. It was a time when the British ruled us, but they were out of the system. So I'm thinking that the people who have contributed in dissolving the administration of the state, they're still part of the system. But this is so grossly incorrect. How will the faith in the system, the police force, come back if those who participated in dissolving that same authority continue to be part of the system? I know it's very naive to say सारे ऑफिसर्स बदल दीजिए, सारी कांस्टेबलरी बदल दीजिए,
बॉस आप एक को तो बदलो.
But then someone has to go. Dr. Guite.
Yes, Kartike, about the vicious cycle of violence. It's a very interesting, which we as a social scientist also, when we engage with development issues and all, we look into the vicious cycle of poverty and how this, when we, in the context of this violence, if you see the vicious cycle of violence that's been happening, you see the root cause. We all know what is the root cause of the ethnic war, right? And we see that the failure of the state machinery under the CM Biren Singh cannot be overlooked and it should be investigated. And when we talk about this vicious, there are like the root cause, the war, the land issue, and then how the violence has come into it. And then you see how this continuing violence against the so-called particular community, here in this context, it's the Kukizong community who is at the receiving end. And there are many historical pasts and also related to exploitation or marginalization, which is continued marginalization that has been happening in all the development sphere and paradigm. And when we see that in entire this cycle, that the continued violence towards this particular group, the women and the children, it also seems to enjoy the support of not just many in positions of power in the state, right? Even many intellectuals, academics, influencers, performing artists are speaking out of ethnic loyalty and not focusing on right and wrong. Right? So that's why in Manipur, conversations about ethnic conflict are getting normalized. And many incidents of terrible violence are getting glossed over, right? And so calls for peace from such voices are, it's woven around these insinuations about particular ethnic groups. And many crimes go unnoticed when influential sections demystify the reason behind this act of violence. So in this entire, and the picture which you have played out, where I would say the women group in the Imphal Valley, the Mera Pairis, they have indeed played an instrumental role in the fight for justice in Manipur, even in the past, in whatever crime happens towards either social evils or towards the armed forces, special power acts and all. But again, now women's group are also now divided along ethnic lines, with some groups reportedly blocking the armed forces from doing their job, while women from other groups are being subjected to the kind of violence we saw in the video. So in this vicious cycle of violence, I would say, perhaps I would say it is time now to seriously consider a solution centered, which is around the cookies only demand for a, like General Mason also really rightly pointed out, that either we should seek for a permanent solution and a demand for a UT with legislature, because such a solution is well within the remit of the constitution. It will take out from this vicious cycle of violence. So though forced, now the government is forced to take action now, but none of these orders should be news to the state government, because so far it has either appeared to not be a neutral and fair arbitrator, or the government is not maintaining a
Guite, I have maybe you can take this question little later. Suhasji, women are at forefront. Most of the visuals, I'm not saying that Manipur is different because women are at the forefront in either its agitation or the visual which we have seen. Is there a context to it? Is there a subtext I'm missing?
Well, I think the subtext is the usual perception which we have is women are the victims. That's absolutely true. But the women are also the perpetrators. They are perpetrators of gross, violations, crime against humanity. And in fact, if you recall the particular incident for which we are debating, where two women were stripped, and I think Dr. Guite had mentioned, some particular women groups calling upon their children, to rape particular women or women belonging to particular community. So I think the unique thing in Manipur, which is unlike in other parts of the Northeast. I have seen the riots in Assam, from 1990s, 1993 onwards, the riots in Bodoland. I had seen the riots in Karbi Anglong, Bodoland once again, 2012, 2014. I had visited almost all the riot affected areas. So I think one of the things which I have noticed here is the participation of women in this particular conflict, in the violence. It's unprecedented. So the stereotype ideas of the text, we always believe that women are the target. I think we also have to remember, at least in Manipur case, what we have seen is that women are also the perpetrators. So that's one issue. The second issue which I wanted to mention is, I think, given the situation which we have in Manipur, I do not think this is the appropriate time where one could discuss the solution before some semblance of trust is restored. I don't think this is the time to discuss scheduled tribe status of the Métis. This is not the time to discuss, I would say, the autonomy, UT, or whatsoever. I think what the state needs at this point in time is some normalcy, some restoration of normalcy, and that has to be done by a neutral party, which is the government of India, central government. So if the central government does not impose president's rule and takes the administration under its own control, I don't think there is in any way they can address the situation to bring the normalcy. And what are we looking at, or what are the possibilities we are having? The possibilities we are having is the government of India is in touch because they belong to the same party with Dr. Biren Singh and the BJP, the Meitei MLS. So the party is fully in charge of that. And in charge of the cookies, the responsibilities have been given to Dr. Himanta Biswa Sarma to engage in some dialogue. And Intelligence Bureau, whose director has been talking to the cookie leaders in Delhi, and the parleys are being held. And in fact, when the video came up, the first thing which the Home Minister Amit Shah did was to assure that the cookie MLAs and the cookie leaders, etc., have been talked to. But still, I think they are taking an approach which is not taking into account the feelings or the sentiments of highly communalized citizens from both sides. I don't think the Métis, whoever it is, whether it's Biren Singh or anybody else, will be in a position to take decisions which will not be liked by the majority Metis. And that's where the political compulsion comes in. So that is the lesson which we have to learn from the engagement with the Nagas, because the Manipuris, the Metis are not, no Metis politician, which included the Ibobi Singh, could give any assurance with respect to division of powers or division of land, territories. So you learn from that, the Naga talks. So the same will apply to the Kuki politicians, Jomi politicians at this stage. I don't think they can give an inch with respect to the demands for autonomy and etc. So that is why I think if we are sensible enough, I mean, if you impose a president in 6 months, bring in the security forces, give them the power, bring or restore normalcy, then of course all these talks could be had. But if anybody is talking about scheduled tribe status, the Metis at this point of time, or the autonomy for the Kukis, I don't think that is can be initiated. So I would say all the officials, including in the Intelligence Bureau or the Ministry of Home Affairs, they are actually taking a holistic approach. They have not put their thoughts into the issue. If they had put their thoughts into the issue, then they would have said that, we impose president's rule for 6 months. Maybe at that point of time, Biren Singh again comes back. But you have to restore normalcy. You cannot restore normalcy with this current government. That's very clear. So if you look at the statements of the Prime Minister or the position in the Parliament, I don't think they want a solution. If you want the solution, the first thing you do is to restore credibility of the government. The credibility of the government of Manipur, which has to be done only through the central government. They're shying away from it as if you impose president's rule, that's going to, stigmatize you forever. No, rather it's the other way around. That if you do not take measures, history will never forgive you. And as I said, this is the riots which are taking place in the age of information technology. When the riots took place between the Nagas and the Kukis in 93 and 94, at that point in time, information technology was not there. Today, one video can shake the conscience of every human being on the planet Earth. And that's why one video forced the Chief Justice of India to speak, the Prime Minister to speak, debate in the Parliament. So if we are in that age, then this is no longer the riots which took place in the 80s and 90s. No, I mean, this situation is different. And I think it's very unfortunate when I look at the response of the Ministry of Home Affairs or the party in the BJP, those who are in power, the Prime Minister, Home Minister, there is no intention whatsoever to resolve this issue, at least to restore the trust for temporarily. Was not even talking about solution. Solution is a long way off.